Alrighty, everyone, Supreme Kami over here. So it is time to do some alteration review for the Raphael Gundam as well as the Sora over here. So unfortunately, I'm still not able to, let's say, compare some stat with like whatever are relatively 6-star parts because there's just literally no way of doing that. But what I have been doing actually is I'm just basically comparing like the base alterating at 5-star to some of our recently part, and I gotta say that in terms of my findings, I can say that these 7-star parts are just basically so here's the thing. Basically they have 7-star parts. They are basically covering up the fact that some of the parts are not really that top tier compared to maybe some parts from, I don't know, maybe let's say the unicorn, for example, or maybe the high new. Just for example for you guys, because if you do compare, let's say, let me give you guys a quick example right now. So I'm gonna talk about, let's say, the cold Sora shield. You guys gonna be like, look at the shield, like look at that 10,000 defense right there, and you got like a 40% trade. So obviously it looks pretty good on paper, right? But if you set everything to base level 1, for example, so this one, I want you guys to just keep that in mind. The melee at base level 1 at 5-star alterated is 113, and then melee defense is actually gonna be 270. So if I compare this one to one of the best shield ever, the costume shield, right? You can find that some of the stat is actually relatively the same. So in terms of the cosmic shield over here, you're looking at 107, and then defense is 272. So do you guys think there's a similarity over here, or do you guys think that the cold star is still a lot more better? This one by the long shot is gonna perform a lot more better, just because this right here is just too good. If whenever we do get 7-star for this guy right here, you can bet that this is gonna at least break over 10k no problem. If like, because I did some cross multiplication, going back to the simple map, I did find that it's very similar, but don't take my word for granted, because my method of doing it may not be like what the actual game can produce and all that. So that is just more or less like my preliminary like findings and all that. So I gotta say, like, all these parts right here, 7-star parts, are just basically cover up having like one more star rarity, and just having one more marks available does make it seem stronger at this point in time. But whenever we do get 7-star for the majority of these here, I would have to say that they are no different than what we have. But let me actually do some review. Like, there are definitely some pretty good parts out here that that needs to be worth mentioning and all that. So in terms of the Raphael, I actually got the backpack. In my initial summoning, I did not get that. But I went back into finishing the Battlefield kit, got my free 1000 harp chips, and you know what? Let me actually do one final multi summon, and there you go. I'm just like, how lucky can I even get? So I'm gonna be talking about the Raphael. So there's only gonna be what 6 part over here. So right out the bat, looking at the head part, I'm not gonna be the biggest fan of having like any sort of EX skill on the head part, especially on a shooting based unit, because the head part for a shooting based build is the most essential part. So this one, for this reason, I'll just have to say, don't even bother alterating it. The stat right here may look fantastic, coming in at 14,000, and the defense is actually quite low. If I compare something to, let's say, the second B, for example, I think this one may be a little bit higher. Yeah, this one is definitely a lot more better. This right here, hello, 40% trade. Do you want to use this version, or do you want to use this guy over here? So I gotta say that the Raphael head is definitely gonna be more or less gonna be for the cosmetic. It looks good. Definitely love the head part, but in terms of the usability, I gotta say no. It's just not that good. And I don't know why they give this guy a extremely high beam resistance compared to the shot attack. So that is just a red flag for me right off the bat. So this is a no alteration for me. So this one is a no. I wouldn't even invest the resources to upgrade to a 7 stars. This is just no way. Even looking at maybe the Hakashiki, maybe this one is even better. I think yeah, they're relatively the same actually. This one, yeah, this one actually does make it a little bit better. Commander is definitely the top tier war tag. to run alongside with what is it, Ace exclusive. So definitely, right? So not gonna be alterating the head. I don't think it's necessary by any means. But looking at the torso is I would have to say is probably one of the better parts to be looking at. Just because if you guys know me, I love all these, portrait that gives buff EXQ effects by 30%, because this way it allows you to do a lot more damage than just anywhere, let's say you need to do more damage in limited time multi-mission boss, and you're like, I'm using already some few custom EXQ or 3 custom EXQ, but I'm still not able to take them down. How about start using some of these portrait, and you guys should find better result. But is this one the one you want to focus on to alterate for say? I don't think this is the best version we're looking at, because this one you won't be able to use this one in many places, because this one is going to be locked to a middle shooter. So that's a thing right there. Really, that's kind of like a red flag. The second red flag for me is that this one is locking specifically to like an attribute. So that means if I want to use this on my other type builds, they are just not gonna work. So my recommendation, if you guys are looking for something of a similarity, for example, I would definitely recommend this one right here. Let me see. The Banshee Noir is probably going to be my best recommendation, but the stat on this one is definitely outdated. But this one is not gonna be it's not gonna get outclassed anytime soon. This one, I do have the problem is this one running on a high firepower you guys may not like that aspect of it, but I would have to say this one is definitely the more lenient type of it, because this right here, the most important trait is not locked to any specific typing, not to any specific word tag, so you're not losing out too much. Let's say you choose to run Gundam type over high firepower, you can still use it, because this one right here is still going to offer you by a lot. So word tag wise, it's not going to be the best. You are going to be locked to close combat as well, so but definitely this is probably the better investment. I think one that is exactly the same is definitely the Quibbly over here, like literally the same thing. Middle shooter, power attribute, just this one is 20 or 22%, while the other one is 30%, and then the stat of this one is definitely not as high. So yeah, literally the same thing. So there's really no point, for example, to go for the Raphael if you guys do have the other two, or especially for the Banshee Noir. If you guys have the Banshee Noir, I say that one is sufficient enough already. So this one, I'm not gonna knock anything down. This one is definitely top tier. Like, look at that melee defense, is pretty up there as well. Like, on a shooting based unit, you have this much defense, quite remarkable, gotta say. I guess they did that because of the word tag. They give it a heavy armor, so you do expect, both the defensive value to be, relatively close to each other, I guess. But definitely a top tier parts to be looking at. Alright, looking at the Raphael arm, I think the arm is another top tier option to be looking at. Like, in terms of overall stat, you can see that the both defensive value is actually the same thing, so that's quite remarkable as well. The shot attack is definitely up there as well, like almost at 7k, so that is quite good right there. This one is going to be offering you a 40% trade, so that is definitely good. My one downside of it is this one locks you to a beam only, so that is not going to be great if you are using some physical type shot EX skills. So I think the next best option we can be looking at, which I think I talked about abruptly when I was doing some summoning, is actually going to be these two right here. Let me do attacks right here. I think what is the second V is. I don't think, no, this one is not it. I think the next best option, I think they're really good, is going to be this one over here. The High New Gundam second form is actually not a bad option, so this one is going to be a double 40%. This one lock into high firepower, like I said again, depending on what type of word tag you're running, this one may not be the best one for you. I do feel like this one with a proper 7-star should perform extremely well. Like, I did kind of did the same thing compared like the base stat, and I did find that they are relatively close out, so I don't see too much of the difference. Like, even when this one does get a 7-star, you can maybe do like a rough estimation, maybe like what, a few hundred differences, so you're not losing by any much, I will have to say. So if you, let's say you have already invested into this armor here, or you have invested into okay, this one over here, whoops, or you have invested into the hot scramble, I think it's still completely fine to be using on for these two specifically. This one is even better. This one Ace exclusive is definitely gonna one of the shooting based word tag to be using. So this one and High New is definitely a top tier option to use if you guys didn't pull it. So those are definitely gonna be some alternative for say. So let me actually hop back into it. Alright, looking at the league, so the league, what they're trying to do, just first things first, looking at the stat, defensive value is going to be pretty much identical again. This one's definitely going to be using on a shooting base, obviously. So this one over here, this is actually not something new actually, or because like what they're trying to do, because they maybe like a few weeks ago, they started to release, let's say, trade that are anti-cooldown reduction. So that's why they're starting out to pump out 23%. I don't see too much of a problem running the regular 20%, because if you're not using cooldown reduction bit in let's say the League 3-on-3 arena, or if you're not really running against into anyone that has so anti-reduction trait, I don't see a point into going slightly higher. I think flat on 100% is still the best play around. Just getting an extra 3% depending on like, you know, your situation does not really grant you any benefit, you know. So this is, you know, you can invest it into this one, I have to say, but do you keep that in mind at base level 1? What is that base level 1? Okay, base level 1 already at 10% is definitely not a bad option for sure, but in terms of grinding up to a 23%, that is definitely going to take a lot of resources. If you guys don't mind taking that route, you're definitely more powers in your hand, because you're actually going to be getting a shooting power boosted by a whopping 40%. So this is not a bad trade-off per se, you know. These limited part definitely has the better option than compared to some of your standard part. They may not have the best, you know, alternative word tag pairing up. So this one is not a bad option. Like I'm not gonna say don't alterate it, you know. If you guys don't have any other option, this one is definitely a must-have per se if you do want to run a cooldown reduction build. But yeah. Alright, moving on to the backpack over here. So this is a pretty much generically what you can see. Quite surprisingly, that the melee defense is actually a lot more higher, slightly higher than the shot defense. So that was like kind of a shocker to me, honestly, right there. But you know what's the most disappointing part is this DX right here. This is called the GM Big Cannon, and this is going to be pumping out only a 24% shot attack, and being an A power is not gonna hit like a truck. So kind of sad right there, I guess, you know. But this one also gonna offer you some beam resistance. I do kind of wish that they will offer health instead, because like HP recovery is probably a lot more needed than, let's say, resistance specifically, because like even if you have that much, even if you do get that much resistance, I don't think you'll be able to block any beam attacks anyway. So kind of a fodder option they're giving out. Word tag wise, you know, I don't know, having heavy armor is definitely the less known word tag to be using in a shooting based build, but it does not mean you cannot use it. It's still gonna offer you 5% and then 5% shot defense, so it's not a bad option by any means and all that. But the EX skill is definitely by far a big letdown right there, so kind of sad. Alright, moving on to the beam rifle. I think the beam rifle is definitely going to be a hot skill for alteration for sure, because the portrait is not packing anything too surprising. Boosting job gauge by 50% is for once is I don't know, because like this one you have to elapse 30 seconds. I feel like maybe 30 seconds you should have maybe finished up your mastery, or maybe in terms of limited time multi-mission boss you may not. But either way, I feel like this is just a very bad trade to be running. Star Wars in this one is definitely pretty high, but do keep that in mind. The portrait it makes up what is the majority of the overall build, so I'm not really gonna say alterate this one. This one tend to stay unalterated at your box, if you will. But if you guys don't have any better option and you did pull this one, definitely alterate it for starting out. But don't try to use this one for a long time per se, because the portrait is just not good. Locking you to only back is kind of like why and all that. So overall, I think probably there's really not a best part to kind of alterate. Maybe the arm, because it is a 40% trait, and maybe the leg, you know. And in terms of the torso, I don't know. I definitely have a mixed feeling about it. It's good. The buff trait is definitely good, but in terms of how viable you are to your different type of build, it's not there also, you know. So now let's actually move on to the cold sword. Cold sword does have 9 parts, so we're definitely trying to make it kind of go through them as fast as I can. Like I said again, quickly compare a few of these parts who are, you know, our current 6-star part, and I do find that that is not too overwhelmingly impressive to me personally. So do keep that in mind before you guys do, let's say, all 3 and 7-star. Do keep that in mind. Just want to do some quick comparison and just some quick researches to some of, you know, recently released Sokai melee or shot unit. Just gonna give you guys a quick benchmark on how good they can be. In terms of the head part, this one is actually not too bad. You know, the melee defense is definitely up there. Melee attack is fairly decent as well, so this one is pretty good. Word check wise, close combat, high firepower, definitely a good option. But this is where you're gonna see some pretty wonky situation for the head trait right here. So this one is knocking you out on a, you know, double tag right here. So they want you specifically to be running high firepower and then close combat. In terms of this type of combo, I feel like it's that lock right there. I don't like being locked to 2 right here, so I gotta say you guys better find some different option besides using this one, because like this is pretty bad. Let's say you don't run high firepower, then you can't really benefit the first trait, or let's say you don't run close combat, how are you gonna get this one? So for me personally, I feel like the head is definitely a skip out for me personally. So if you guys don't mind being locked to these 2 specific word tag, then you're fine. But other than that, it's just for the longevity wise, in terms of, you know, using it in different situation, that would not really benefit you all around. So probably gonna be a hot skip for me in terms of alteration, because of, you know, the restriction right there. Moving on to the torso over here. So the torso does have 10k melee armor, so that is pretty much as expected, because like lately, in terms of even prior to 7-star parts for melee specifically, they tend to rack up armors up to like 8k, 7k. So no surprise, this one is gonna be a 10k on the bench right there. So this one is gonna be one of your cooldown reduction type build, and I gotta say, in terms of SoCal part, it's just so hard to get up to max level 10. So I would have to say the overall purpose to try to get this one. With that being said, this one being a SoCal part, I don't think I'm not gonna suggest like investing too much into this one. I think going for the standard option is definitely a lot more easier. Just you don't have to spend way too much of your time trying to get this one to max out level 10. So this one by all means is not bad, but this one logged into beam specifically is going to be my only concern, because I feel like melee specifically does use a lot of physical EX skill. So that's just kind of my experience with playing melee build specifically. But there are definitely some pretty OP, like, you know, shooting beam specific melee weaponry. So, you know, but you know, just gonna say that one more time, if you are gonna work on these type of specific build, I feel like going for, let's say, P attribute is gonna be a lot more easier for your cooldown reduction build, because S attribute, I recall at this current stage, you will need a few limited time parts in order to get up to a fully 100% cooldown reduction. So I don't know if this one is gonna help it by any means, but you know, this one, I would say kind of skip on it. I think going for standard option is definitely the better way. All right, moving on to the armor over here. So let's see what we have. So 13k at max, and then 85 for the melee defense. Definitely a top tier for sure. But the portrait is actually not that great of a trait. So this one is gonna be, what is it, melee power reduced right there. So that's, you know, depending on the playstyle, that could be good. But lock into a lance category, come on now, what's going on? This one, so this way you have to knock out one enemy first or shot down before you can benefit that, you know, non-EX skill power boosting. So I don't like that part, because this one is simply saying you don't want to use any EX skill per se. So why? I don't know. I feel like, you know, if this translates, it should mean melee power boosting by 40%, but they're specifically saying non-EX skill. So in terms of my interpretation, I feel like any EX skill is not really gonna get that benefit. So kind of a unfortunate right there if I'm assuming it right. But you know, probably gonna be a hot skill for alteration because of the reason being right there. So quite sad. Alright, but moving on to the leg right here. So the leg actually does come with a SS minus power EX skill, but the one letdown of this one, actually, you know, they are not giving you any, let's say, attack buffer. So no matter how powerful your EX skill can be, per se, like in terms of the damage multiplier, if you're not getting any attack buffs, how are you gonna do more damage? You know what I mean? Because like if you do have any effects down here, you can definitely take advantage of buff EXQ effects because they will innate you to do more damage. But this one, just solely being an SS power does not really mean a thing, I guess. So probably if you ask me, I don't really, I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't alterate it just because of the fact that this one is not really granting an additional effects and all that. But if you purely do like the late EXQ animation, I guess kind of go for it. So that is definitely gonna be my recommendation in that respect. The stun of this one is actually not too terrible, so gotta give it to that. War tag wise, high firepower and high mobility, so definitely pretty good as well. So alright, moving on to the backpack. So this is just a very generic backpack with some pretty good stat, obviously rounding up to 8k right there. This is just a regular 20-second cooldown EXCO, so unalterated you should be doing B plus power. So just further alterating means you just purely want it for the stat purposes over here. So do keep that in mind. In terms of your portrait, do make sure that you have some portrait to allow you to output more damage and all that. So in terms of EXQ, I don't see too much of a great things coming out of it because of the Kugo. I think this is the Koga Rush or whatever you call it. So I don't think it's that best performing EXQ wise over here. So probably a skip alteration for me personally. If I do have it for saying, I don't unfortunately. Alright, moving on to this one over here. So this one right here, let's see. So I do actually have it, so let me take a look. What is it prior to alteration? I believe it's actually B minus. Okay, I feel like B minus is actually a satisfactory level for me personally. It should output good enough. So because this one being a melee type unit right here, I would have to say I don't really like it when they throw in an E skill on melee slash. So this one I would have to say without alteration should perform extremely well as the EX skill already. But if you purely do want to use a stat in this, I'm not really gonna recommend it at the moment, just because of the fact that this one is not gonna have a portrait per se, or if your sub slot don't have a portrait, then you're gonna run into a situation where you have 2 trait slots that are empty. So stat wise, it's definitely gonna be fantastic, but I think the main trophy is definitely gonna be this one right here. This is definitely gonna be the next milestone, like, oh, what is gonna be like the next melee weapon to get, because this one is gonna be pumping out a 40% melee boosting, so not bad actually. But this one locking into a close combat can be an issue depending on if you're a close combat attack user, or let's say high mobility, high firepower, and all that, etc. and etc. But definitely a solid option for sure. Great word tag as well, so definitely good, all around good. In terms of the beam rifle, definitely have some pretty insanely high melee attack on a beam rifle for melee specifically. Good word tag as well, so that is nice. But this one is definitely going to be the one you don't really need to alterate, because the second portrait does not really serve too much of a great purpose. So this not even alterating it, it should be completely fine. This one is when armor is 60% or more, job gauge increased by what, 20%, so kind of a fodder trait as well, so pretty bad. But moving on to the shield me personally does look pretty intriguing because it's actually a double 40% trait. But my issue is this one over here logging into only a late EX skill, so like why? What about my other EX skill? So if they were to make this like a generalized EX skill power boosting, I think that would be good. This one locking into a high mobility may not be the worst case scenario, because there are definitely those players that run high mobility, so this one is definitely going to be a good option for you guys out there. But I'm just going to say one more time, the costume shield would definitely outrun this one by landslide, because that one having above EX effects is definitely makes it a lot more better than this one right here. So definitely a good job on the development side to release this type of trait right here. But this one is like, the first condition is bad, this one is kind of like a kind of situation. So me personally, if you guys do want to alterate it, and do keep that in mind, you have to be using this one and do have to have a late EX to take advantage of that. If you guys don't mind this stipulation, I think this is still a solid option. But you know, if you guys can definitely get your hands into the costume shield, I will definitely run that one over this one any time of the day. So With that being said, that is going to be pretty much it. I do feel like that in terms of both unit purposes, like whatever they're doing, they're not really that top tier or even the stats. 7-star, the level 7-star does really make them pop out, but in reality, they may not be that good of a part compared to some R6-star part already. But you know, until then, like really until they start to release more 7-star part to let's say some standard part or even some rerun on the older one, that then they can drop the 7-star. I think like these would still be a good option, but they're not too good to option that you say, oh, I gotta alterate it at the exact like immediately, for example. But you know, with that being said, that is going to be pretty much it with this review over here, and I'll catch you guys all on the next one.